Hi there! Welcome to Winter DIYs at the Schwoven's Nest. My name is Sandra, and I'm so glad you're here. For my second project, I'm going to start off with this little tin, and I'm going to give it quite a few coats of DIY chalk paint. I think I end up giving it almost 3 coats, making sure it dries really well in between. With my Craft Smart paint pen with the fine tip in black, I'm going to write the word snowballs. I'm starting with the W and I'm working my way to the end of the word, and then I'm going to come back to the W and work my way back to the beginning of the word. And that just helps me to center my letters. Now that I've got my letters, I'm going to go through them one more time and make them thicker. Since this is turning into a fun little snowball bucket, I decided just to add some little circles to all of the corners or the edges of the letters and make it just look really sweet and fun. I really like doing shadow lines on my letters, so you're going to see me do this a lot when I'm doing freehand writing. It just helps to make it look more like a decal or something you would find at a store. I wanted to add some snowflakes to the bucket, and I really like the look of these. This stencil was a little too big, so I'm just going to use it as a reference and hand draw some of my own. The nice thing about drawing snowflakes is they don't have to be perfect, because snowflakes out in the real world aren't perfect either. I just love the enamel look with the white and the black. So I'm just taking a makeup sponge and some of the black acrylic paint and just going across the rim on the bottom and the top of the little bucket. So I'm just going to make sure that I get as close as I can without actually mucking up and getting too much on the tin itself. And then I'm going to flip it over and get the top side of the rim as well. Instead of filling the bucket with a whole bunch of styrofoam that I don't really need, I cut out a circle of cardboard that goes down about an inch, almost to like that first line that you see there on the tin. And I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of white chalk paint. Adding just a little bit of hot glue to one side, I'm going to get it positioned into the tin where I need it to be, and then I'll push it down and then use some hot glue just to hold it all in place. So I broke down and bought a bag of this shredded snow, which is just shredded plastic. And I thought I would try using it on this project to see if I liked the look of it. I didn't use any of it in my Christmas decor because I wasn't sure that it was going to be something I was going to like. But I thought, well, now with winter and I'm doing a lot of snow projects in the next little bit, so I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. And it actually looks pretty cool. So I'm just using some hot glue and then I'm pouring it on and tapping it into place, and then I'll shake off the excess. I picked up some of these styrofoam balls before the holidays at Michael's, and I got these because I liked the rough texture of them and they already had some sparkle to them. They were in the floral department, but they're not the smooth styrofoam that you normally see. So I'm just taking some hot glue and gluing them in, and then I'm going to pile up the last 3 to make a nice mound of snowballs. Using some hot glue, a pair of tweezers, and some more shredded snow, I'm just going to fill in all of the gaps in between the snowballs. And it looks pretty good when it's done. I already did the same thing down at the bottom to fill in the gaps between the cardboard and the snowballs, and I think it's looking pretty cool. I wanted to have it look like there was some snow on the edge of the bucket, so using a bamboo skewer and some Mod Podge, I literally just dripped some of the glue on and then poured on some Epsom salts, and they stick really well to the Mod Podge. It looked really cute, so I just continued to do that all the way around the bucket in some spots, and then I did some on top of the snowballs too. I decided that I wanted something a little extra for this, so I'm making a little sign out of a jumbo popsicle stick. Those were my miter shears that you saw me use. They are fantastic, so if you're a crafter and you do a lot of little cutting like this with sticks and pieces of wood, you need to grab these. I do have a link for them down in my description box. I'm also now taking just a couple of pieces of these coffee stir sticks that are just little tiny popsicle sticks, and I'm going to use some hot glue to put these two pieces together. I'm going to give it a couple of coats of my DIY white chalk paint. For the stake that's going to be holding the sign, I'm going to use the rest of the little coffee stir stick, and I'm going to paint it black. The makeup sponge that I used earlier still had some black paint on it, so I'm just dabbing it around the edges to make it look a little bit more rustic too. Using the fine tip Sharpie pen, I'm just going to write the words "Rolled Fresh Daily." And then I'm going to glue the sign onto the stick and glue it right into the snowballs. I hope This is a wood cutout snowman from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be taking some jumbo popsicle sticks and gluing them on in a shiplap manner all the way to the top. Once I'm done gluing them on, I'll flip him over, put him down on my self-healing cutting mat, and use my utility knife to trim off the popsicle sticks. So here he is, my little wood snowman, and he's gonna get a couple of coats of DIY white chalk paint. If you're interested in how I make DIY chalk paint, I've got a recipe down in my description box. I grabbed 3 of these 8x10 canvases. They were 3 for $3 at Walmart. I painted them white, and I'm going to use this one as the backdrop for my little snowman. Before I attach the snowman, I'm going to use this snowflake stencil that I cut out using my Cricut Joy and some Parisian gray chalk paint. And as I move around the canvas, I'm going to change the direction of the snowflakes. I'm also going to have some of them fall off the page, so you'll only see partial snowflakes, and that just gives it more of a high-end look. While the snowflakes dry, I'm going to work on my snowman. I'm taking that same Parisian gray chalk paint and I'm going to rough up his edges, make him look a little bit distressed. I'm also going to do a little bit of black, and then I'll run my brush across the snowman the same way the popsicle sticks are and give him some more distressing that way. Using a generous amount of hot glue, I'm going to glue the snowman down onto the canvas. Using my Cricut Joy, I designed a decal that says "There's snow place like home," and I'm going to go ahead and apply it. What would a snowman be without a cute little hat? I've got these little leftover socks from when I was making some gnomes, so I decided to give him a cute little blue toque hat. And I'm just going to glue that on and then fold up the brim and make it look really cute. I'm also going to add a little blue scarf with some little tails hanging down, and then I'm also going to add a little pom-pom for his hat. Of course, my little snowman needs some buttons, so I'm taking my Craft Smart paint pen and I'm going to draw 3 little black circles down his body. He's also going to get 2 little black eyes, a little black mouth that looks like little coal dots have been put on, and then I'm going to take a burnt orange color and paint on a little carrot nose. I scrounged around in my stash and I came upon this white frame which has a little bit of a blue tinge to it, so I thought it would complement the picture perfectly. It fits in there really well, and I'm just going to take some hot glue and glue the canvas right down to the frame just to make sure that it doesn't move around. The last thing to do was just to put the backing right back in. It fit perfectly, and it has an easel so I can stand it up or hang it, whichever works out best. And of course, no project of mine would be complete without a little bit more distressing. So I'm just using that same brush that has a little bit of black paint on it and just going across the frame just to bring out the dimension of those lines. I have to say, I think this sign turned out pretty darn cute. I am going to be making a few little mini decor items for tier trays for winter. Using the tumbling tower blocks that you can get at the Dollar Tree, I'm going to make a window frame. To create the window pane dividers, I'm going to use some regular size popsicle sticks. I trimmed one down to fit the narrow portion, and then the other popsicle stick will fit right across the wider portion. In order for this window to stand up on its own, I'm using a larger block. This is a tumbling tower block, but it's from Walmart and it's the actual full-size blocks, just like the Jenga blocks. I'm going to glue it to the front and it's going to create a little window box. The window is going to get 2 coats of DIY chalk paint in white, and if I can find the tumbling tower large set online somewhere, I will add that link down in the description box. Using a rough brush and some black paint, I'm going to go around the edges like this, making it have some distressing, and then I'm also going to take my brush and just run it lightly against the white all over, just so it has more texture and dimension. I'm using one of these green ties that you can get in a pack of 12 from the Dollar Tree at Christmas time. I've got some left over, but I'm going to trim it right down. I want it nice and short. It's meant for a mini window, so these strands are really long, so I'm just going to give it a really good haircut. I've cut the pieces in 2-inch strips and I'm just bending them a little bit so they hang down over the little block. And I'm going to use hot glue to glue them into place. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to add these little mini pine cones. They look a little big because they're so close up, but they're tiny little pine cones. They're probably about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch long. They come from hemlock trees, and I'm going to glue a few of them all along the greenery. I'm going to be adding some winter snow and ice effect. I have a bamboo skewer that I'm dipping into my Mod Podge, and I'm just dropping it onto the greenery and onto the pine cones, and I'm leaving it fairly thick. You can see that it's dripping there a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to take some Epsom salts and pour them on top of the glue and then just press them down lightly with my finger to make sure they stick, and then I'll shake off the excess. What I'm doing here with the Mod Podge, letting it drip down, is something that I came upon accidentally. I had some drips of glue on a previous project, and I realized that as soon as I poured the Epsom salt on, it stuck really well. So it looks like the snow is dripping down off of the project, and it looks really pretty. I'm starting off with my first project, and I'm using these garden stakes that I pick up in a pack of 10 from my local Dollarama store. They come out every spring and summer, so I always grab a bunch of them because they're super easy to work with. I'm just going to take the corner edges here off to make them look a little bit more rounded. These are going to serve as my skis. I'm standing them up to figure out the angle that I want them to be at, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to glue them together. Then I'm going to give them a couple of coats of my DIY white chalk paint. This is using some talc and latex paint, just a regular sealing paint that you can get at the hardware store. If you want the full recipe, it's down in my description box. While I let those skis dry, I'm going to take another short piece and just cut off the angle. I'm also going to paint this with a couple of coats of the white. I wanted these skis to have a bit of a stained look to them, so I am using this water-based gel stain from Americana Paints and a really rough brush, and I'm going to do somewhat of a dry brushing with it. This isn't exactly a stain material, it's more of just a gel kind of paint. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but it works really well for this project. So I'm going to continue to do this until I get the stain effect that I like. Taking the little piece, I'm going to use the same stain, but this time I'm just going to distress it around the edges. I want there to be a contrast between the skis and this little sign, so I'm just going to leave the interior more white. I got the brown on there fairly dark, but I wanted to add a little bit more texture and distressing. So I'm taking my chip brush and some black paint, and I'm just going to go over it a few times, dry brushing it and just deepening up the color. So it looks like I missed some footage here, but you get the idea. I wrote the word ski lodge and I put an arrow underneath, and now I'm just going over the letters a little bit more with my Sharpie fine point pen just to thicken them up and make them look a little bit more distinct. I have tons of little greenery pieces left over from the Christmas holidays. So I'm going to be adding two of these little pine branches to the skis, one facing down and one facing up. To add a little bit more different texture, I'm also going to be using these other little pine picks. I picked both of these up on Amazon before the holidays, and I use them a whole lot in my decor. I just love them. They look so realistic. I'm cutting these picks in half, and I'm just going to put them around the center of the skis. For the little sign, I'm going to apply a generous amount of hot glue into the center and then hold it down a little bit on an angle so it adds some character. Because this is a winter decor item, I'm going to add these little white frosted berries that I picked up after the holidays, but they were part of the Christmas decor at my Dollarama store. So I'm just going to trim off some of the little brown pieces that are the stem and then cut some smaller pieces and glue them around the sign. I'm also going to add a few single snowballs here and there. To complete this little project, I'm just taking a brush that has some white paint on it and going over the greenery to make it look like it's got some touches of snow. DIY number 2 is using these little wreath forms from the Dollar Tree. They come 2 in a pack, and I believe they're about 8 inches wide. I had a little pine cone wreath hanging on my cupboard door for the Christmas holidays, and when I took it down, it looked so bare. So I decided to make one for winter. I've got tons of this buffalo check ribbon because I used it to decorate my tree. So I'm going to go ahead and glue one end on and simply wrap it all the way around this wreath form. I also made sure that each of the loops was about the same distance apart from the previous one. Now I'm just going to cut the ribbon off and hot glue it down. I'm going to use the same type of picks that I used for my skis, and I'm also going to add some of the little snowballs. But I'm going to do something a bit different with this one. I'm not going to make the greenery go all the way around the wreath. I'm just going to have it sitting towards the bottom. So I'm going to play around with it and figure out what kind of system I want to put it in. So I've decided to take these two pine branches and put them across at the outside, and then I'm going to fill it in with the other pine branches and some other types of greenery. I didn't want this wreath to look too Christmassy, so I decided to add some of these little vine branches. These are so full. I picked them up at Dollarama last year, and it's got a ton of little branches on it. So I'm going to trim some off and place them in between the pines. I'm just going to cut some pieces and then glue them all the way through the greenery. Since I covered up all the wire from the wreath form, I needed some type of hanger. So I decided on this white nautical rope. This is something that I picked up at Michael's a while ago, and it's lasted me a really long time. I'm just going to hot glue a loop right onto the back. Using the same paintbrush that has some white paint on it, I'm going to go ahead and just mark up these greenery pieces so they look like they've had a little touch of snow, just like I did with the skis. Project number 2 is using this car wash towel that you can get at the Dollar Tree. They're really nice and fuzzy, and I'm going to be creating a little fuzzy snowman. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut out a rectangle that will be his body. And what I do with that is just roll it and glue it into place so I have a tube. I just use some hot glue to put it all together. Just make sure you don't burn your fingers when you're using fabric and hot glue together. The next step is to turn the tube inside out so I can tie off one of the ends and close it up. Then I turn it right side out again so that little knot is hidden right inside the body of the snowman. Using a little cup, I'm just going to be filling it up with some filler that I've had around the house, and these were just used from other projects many years ago when pink and purple were my colors, which they no longer are. Although I like to wear those colors, I don't want any of that in my home decor. So I'm making this a little bit of a beanbag snowman. I want to have those fillers in at the bottom so it will give him a nice sturdy base to stand on. Once I've got him filled how I like it, I'm just going to go ahead and tie off the top. I'm going to repeat this whole process using a smaller rectangle, which will become the snowman's head. It's time now to attach the two pieces together. I've cut off the top of the string that was extra on the body. I'm just placing a really large amount of hot glue, as you can see there, and then I'm just going to press the head down and hold it there for a bit until it dries. Now that it's all dry, he needs a little hat. I've got this little sock that was left over from making some gnomes over the Christmas holidays, and I'm going to make him a little toque. I cut somewhat of a rectangle from the top of the sock, and I'm doing the same thing, tying a knot around the narrow end of the sock, and then I'll flip it inside out. I'm just checking to see that it's going to fit his little head, and then I'm going to turn up the brim of it and hot glue that into place so it looks like his little winter hat has a little rolled cuff on it. I'm just going to use some hot glue to glue the cuff into place. Again, using some hot glue, I'm going to put a whole bunch on the very top of the head and then glue the hat down into place. And I think he's starting to look super cute. I cut a narrow strip of the sock to make him a scarf that I glued all around his neck. And then I have a couple of little pieces hanging down. Towards the end, I decided he needed some longer strands hanging down, so I trimmed these original ones off a little bit and added some longer ones. I'm using these little upholstery tacks for his eyes and for his nose. And then I have these larger ones that I'm going to use as his buttons. I'm going to take my snips and just trim off the long piece because I don't need that, and then just hot glue them right onto his belly. I'm going to use one of the little upholstery tacks for his nose, but I'm going to glue it on backwards. So the head of the nail is going to be on his little face, and then the pointy part will stick out, and it's going to look a little bit like a carrot. I decided to paint his little nose orange, so I'm using this honey brown color and a really small brush, and it turns out really cute. The last thing I did was take my Sharpie pen and just draw on a little perky smile. This next project is also using some of the birch bark that was around some of the wood rounds that I have. So birch bark tends to fall off of the wood once it's been cut really easily. So I was able to just pop these rounds off. I started with one in the center and then I trimmed the other ones. I just cut them in half. And now I'm just creating a wreath design by hot gluing the pieces together. When I'm gluing things together that need to set a little bit, I like to use these little plastic clamps. I got a big pack of them at the Home Depot. I'm using some of this boxwood greenery. They were $1.25 a stem at my local dollar store, and I'm going to take them outside and give them a really light coat of white spray paint. And what that does is actually make them look a little frosty and almost like the color of lamb's ear. If you've watched me make wreaths before, I always take apart the stems, but this time I'm going to leave them whole because I want more of a full look. I'm not going to be covering all of the birch bark with these branches. I'm just going to be doing sort of a halfway asymmetrical kind of look. The other thing I'm going to do is use some of these sticks that I have left over from a project in the summer, and I'm going to just add those in with some hot glue. These twig branches usually break fairly easily, but some of them, like this one, are a little thicker, so I had to use my snips to get it broken in half. So here comes the fun part. I've got these ping pong balls that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and I'm using some kosher salt. And what I'm going to do is make these look like little snowballs. So I'm putting a good amount of kosher salt in a little plastic container. I'm going to use Weldbond glue because this has more of a tacky texture to it, and it's better than using Mod Podge. The first thing I'm going to do is just melt a hole in the ping pong ball, and the only reason I'm doing that is so I can hang onto it. I've just stuck a little dowel in. You can use the end of a paintbrush, you can use a toothpick, but you would just need to make a smaller hole with your hot glue gun. Then I'm going to use a paintbrush and I'm going to put glue all over the ping pong ball. And then it's going into the kosher salt, and I'm going to make sure that I press it down really nicely and shake off any excess. Check it out. It looks just like a perfect little snowball with all those little ice crystals on it. To make sure that none of the salt falls off, I'm going to give each of these little snowballs a couple of good coats of hairspray and then let that dry. I hope you enjoyed my winter DIYs. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. That gets me noticed on YouTube, which helps my channel grow. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Bye for now.